Hello everyone and welcome to the first game we'll be showing after the conclusion of Norway Chess. I myself, like I said, personally enjoyed the tournament very much. I know you guys did as well. And now until we start the next big thing, I decided to show you a couple of engine games, which I don't usually do as well. They are extremely addictive, and if you watch too much engine chess you will not be able to go back to human chess. But this is a very special game as it features everyone's favorite Evans Gambit, and it is played between two very strong engines. Schach Chess Santiago version rated 3622, and Ethereal, I don't think Ethereal is also 3622. Let me just check. No, it's 3567. Sorry about that. Let me just check. 3567. And it's just, whenever I talk about the Evans Gambit, you guys are like, yeah, but that's not a serious opening. Well, okay, here you will see an opening that is not so serious. The Evans Gambit being employed against the 3567 engine. So that is an engine that would defeat Magnus Carlsen. Let's say if 100 games were played, it would beat Carlsen 100-0. And also, it's interesting. These two engines do not use neural networks. So, for example, Schach Chess here, it's built on Stockfish, but it has a sort of a human way of reasoning built into it. It's using a book called Basics of Chess or Strategy of Chess. By I can check. I don't know who wrote it. Strategy of Chess by international master Alexis Streltsov, and it's using the book and sort of the principles in the book that sometimes it favors. Let's say this bishop might be very useful on this long diagonal 50 moves ahead over the short-term calculation. So it's trying to emulate being human, not in a way a neural network would, but in a different way. And on the other hand, Ethereal, it's not based on Stockfish. It's an entirely new engine built from scratch, but that's based on pure calculation. So sometimes it will go very deep, 40 moves deep, and try to calculate everything, and it's just a clash of two very different principles, much like you had when Stockfish first faced AlphaZero, when Stockfish was not using neural networks back in 2016. So it's a really cool game. Features, like I said, the Evans Gambit. Let's check it out and see how the Evans Gambit is played at this level. The time control is 40 moves for 15 minutes, so I use the rapid time format, but I don't think when showing engine games, it really matters all that much. So let's check it out. Schach Chess Santiago probably refers to a version of this engine, even though I'm not sure, but yeah, it's a pretty cool name. Opens with pawn to e4, and we already said that it will be an Evans Gambit. E4, e5, knight f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4, and bishop to c5. Of course, pawn to b4, the strongest move in any position. The Evans Gambit is on the board. Bishop captures, we have pawn to c3 and bishop to a5. For those of you who maybe do not know, I made a short tutorial on how to play the Evans Gambit, and after c3, I cover all of the popular openings, retreats of the bishop, like a5, c5, even d6, even e7, and even f8. So if you encounter any of those, you know what to do. Will be the first link in the description below. We have pawn to d4, we have pawn to d6, this is the so-called Bronstein defense, and queen to b3. This is the most standard setup in the Evans Gambit. You always go after this f7 pawn, and black always replies the same. Bishop to b6 will be black's main idea, but here in this particular case, queen to d7 is the best move for black. We have castles kingside, and now bishop to b6. It's a pretty standard idea. You put more pressure on the center, and you free up the a5 square for the knight. We have knight b to d2, and now knight to a5, attacking the queen and the bishop. And once this light square bishop is eliminated, white's attack will not be so impressive, or so you'd think. Queen back to c2, and now queen to e7. Now, for those of you who play the Evans Gambit and played against the Evans Gambit, queen to e7 is, well, as far as we know, the strongest move in the position to date. But everyone always captures the bishop. It's very human to capture this light square bishop, because we know from experience that this bishop is just a menace, and white will, make problems for us if we don't eliminate that bishop. And in 2016, Shahriar Mamedov actually played the Evans Gambit against future world champion then Ding Liren, and Ding captured on c4. Even though it's not actually the best idea here, the knight comes to c4, will put pressure on the bishop, will eliminate the bishop, and then, you know, just put the queen on d3 and have a very, very comfortable game. So queen to e7 is the way to play. We have bishop to a3 and now pawn to f6. Very, very precise play, as you would expect from a 35-67 engine. And here we have bishop to b5 with check. And this is a new move in the position. There is a game between human players where rook a to b1 was played. If you ask Stockfish, let's say at the depth 35, it will say, okay, you play something like rook f to d1, rook a to d1, you could go bishop to d5. But here we have bishop to b5 check, and it is not as of move 12 that we have a completely new game. So let's see what secrets this position unfolds. We have pawn to c6. Okay, bishop back to d3, and now knight to h6. Preparing knight f7, maybe then the knight comes to g5. All depends on what black plays and on what white plays. We have pawn to c4, trying to hinder black's development a little bit because, well, black would very much like the castle here. But if you castle, then c5 can be somewhat annoying. For example, if you capture, you're gonna, okay, you may mess up white's pawn structure, but this will be a very, very powerful setup. The bishop will come to c7, and now you can play bishop to b4. And it's very annoying. The bishop here constantly has to look after that knight. You can never challenge the c5 pawn with b6 because, well, that's just problem. And it looks very weird. So instead, first pawn to c5. Then, of course, black will castle. And now pawn to d5. And something that I found out, unfortunately, that whenever I play the Evans Gambit, and sometimes, you know, out of nowhere the position in the center closes. Sometimes, you know, I have to play d5, even though I would very much prefer an open game. I get to this closed center, and then I just feel worse. I just feel like I haven't really done enough to, you know, justify the opening choice and just being down a pawn. It's not that I care that I'm down a pawn, it's just that it's very, very hard for me to find counterplay. But let's see how a 3600 engine does it. We have bishop to d8 and bishop back to b2. Castle's kingside, we have pawn to a4 and pawn to g6. We have pawn to h3, just very, very useful moves, limiting the mobility of that light square bishop, and pawn to b6. We have knight to h2 and queen to g7. We have pawn to g4, stopping any advancements with pawn to f5, and now knight to f7. We have pawn to h4, continuing to push on the king side, and knight back to h6. We have queen to d1, now defending that g4 pawn, and king to f7. Black says, alright, it's getting a bit too uncomfortable here, I will hide my king over to the queen side. We have pawn to f4. Makes sense, as the king is on f7, and also it might help open up the light square bishop. We have king to e8, and now king to h1. The king also gets a bit of a safer square, there's the queen on the g-file, so it makes sense. We have e captures on f4, grabbing the pawn and also opening up this diagonal. Rook captures on f4, and now knight back to f7. This is a very useful move, because what else could you play? Let's say you play bishop b7, all of a sudden g5, and black will have problems with that f6 pawn. So knight f7 controls the g5 square, and queen to c2 now. We have knight to e5, and black says, I really have no problems here. I mean, it is very, very hard to develop my pieces, but how are you breaking through? So let's see what happens. Rook a to f1, and how is Shah chess using that human reasoning that we discussed in the beginning. We have bishop to e7 and knight d to f3. Okay, offering a trade of knights, maybe even preparing some sacrifices on e5, who knows. King to d8, and now it's very hard for you to make any kind of plan here with white. Sure, you could push some pawns on the king side, but that would also weaken the white king. But here, look at this. Knight captures on e5, f captures. You could also capture with this pawn, but then the d file might open up. F captures, and now rook captures on f8, bishop captures, and queen to f2. Okay, the f file opens up, and white has a threat of queen captures on f8, but it's not a problem. King to e8. And again, there's no good way for you to break through except one, and that is knight to f3. A move that seems impossible because, well, what's stopping the bishop from capturing on g4? And if the bishop gets developed, then all of a sudden everything is developed. But if bishop captures on g4, then you sacrifice on e5. And without this sacrifice, the light square and dark square bishop, yes, white has a bishop pair, but the bishop pair is doing absolutely nothing. But due to the weird positioning of the knight and the rook basically doing nothing, you can do this. Knight captures, d captures, bishop captures on e5, and now if the queen captures, then you capture on f8. And if the queen moves, then you play something like queen f4. With tempo, you attack the bishop, you move the bishop to c3, and you start marching your pawns up the board, and you suffocate that black king. So it would be game over if that happened. So, of course, now bishop captures on g4, bishop to e7. We have queen to g3, now adding support to the g and h pawn, and pawn to g5. And you might be thinking, well, what to do here? Well, you definitely don't want to play h5, even though you kind of want to have everything closed up and just use the f-file to your advantage. Here, after bishop to f6, there's no using the f-file. The king will just add support to that bishop, and rook, knight, and queen will not be able to do anything about it, and the bishop pair will be again stuck for the rest of the game. So after g5, we have h captures on g5, opening up the h-file as well. And now, look at this, knight to b3. And the reason for that is that if you play bishop captures on g5, then the knight doesn't capture the bishop, which you would again expect. The knight again captures on e5. You again just sacrifice. And if d captures, bishop captures, and again, those two pawns will be a huge problem. You can even allow a check, let's say king to g2, bishop d7. Again, you move the bishop, bishop c3, and the pawns are marching forward. Whatever black plays, let's say knight b7, you're going to go rook to h1, you activate the rook, e5 is coming, d6, e6, all depending on what black plays, but there is no play here for black. So after h captures on g5, Ethereal goes knight to b3, and now queen to h4 with check. Just queen to h4. We have rook to b8 trying to activate because, well, you really have no square for the knight, for the rook, for the bishop, and for the queen, really. So knight captures on e5. Again, just breaking through. We have d captures, and now queen to h5 with check. Queen to g6, other moves are really, not helping. Otherwise, rook to f7, and you just completely take control over the game. So queen to g6, offering a queen trade, but now just bishop captures on e5. And you don't care that you're down a piece, you're down a full knight, even though the knight on b3 isn't really doing anything. But if black decides to trade, let's say captures, look at all these passed pawns. I mean, that's, you can't play this. Bishop captures, there's bishop captures on b8. You can't do anything. If you move the rook, then g6 is coming, you create another passed pawn. So that's a problem. So after bishop captures on b5, rook to b7 was played, and now bishop back to f4, defending on g5. And, well, you're gonna, let's say, defend the bishop, you're gonna play e5, open an attack on the queen, force a trade on h5. Point is, black has no useful move. All of these pieces and zero moves you can play. So queen captures on h5, it's even the top move recommended by the engine I'm using to analyze the game. G captures, and now knight to d4. Okay, now the knight from a5 comes to d4. It is finally activated, but pawn to e5. What is it doing on d4? We have bishop to h3. Also, the bishop gets activated, but rook f2. And again, what is the bishop doing on h3? We have bishop to f5, offering a trade, but now white gladly trades. We have captures, and king to g2. And now look at these pawns. Again, black is up a piece, black is up a full knight, but, I mean, look at those pawns. We have bishop to d8, king to f3, rook to f7, aligning the rook nicely with the king on the f-file, but it doesn't matter. Rook to b2, preparing a5, and then you open up, and then maybe you shift to the a-file. Doesn't really matter, there is nothing black can do here. We have rook to f8, king to e4, and now knight to g7. There is a very interesting idea of capturing on g5 here. For example, you capture, and after bishop captures, you can go knight g3 check. Okay, the rook cuts off the king from the f file, and after you move the king wherever, you can just pick up a pawn. And okay, you give back the piece, you grab 2 pawns, and now if you count the pieces and the pawns, the material is equal, 4 pawns each, rook and knight versus rook and bishop. But even though the material is equal, the quality of the pieces most certainly is not. For example, rook h2, tags the knight, you have to move it, you're going to lose the h7 pawn, then you lose the a7 pawn, then all of these pawns, and it's you know, no equal material does not equal an equal position. So knight back to g7, and now rook to h2, preparing to start advancing those pawns. We have king to f7 and pawn to h6, knight to e8 and rook to g2. Again, making black's pieces just look silly. I mean, this is it's very unnatural to, you know, watch an Evans Gambit game, you know, to be such a close position and to be played to such positional perfection. But you know, I love it. We have king to g6 and now pawn to d6, pawn to a6, and now bishop back to d2. Just you know, taking away everything that black might throw at white. Pawn to a5 and just king to d5. We have rook to f5. Okay, putting some pressure on that g5 pawn, but just rook to e2. You don't really care about that g5 pawn. You could capture it, but okay, once you trade everything, I mean, what are you doing? d7, d8. There's no stopping the queen. So after rook to e8, king to f7, and now rook to e4. Again, just taking away, you know, every move that black might have. King to g6 and now king to e6, and here Ethereal played the rook to f2, and he was in this position on move 56 that Ethereal resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Once the bishop is moved, let's say bishop to c1, there are no more moves. If you play something like rook to c2, white really doesn't care. White can just play something like king to d7. Look at the bishop and knight. All of these pawns are controlling all of the dark squares that the bishop and knight can use to get into the game, and there is nothing you can do here. It doesn't matter that you're up a piece. You could be up. Even another rook. It wouldn't really make a difference. For example, you can go after the rook. The rook could defend the bishop. Let's say you capture the pawn on g5. Let's say captures, and now king captures, and okay. It's both players have a rook, but pawn to d7 will be played, and that's it. The rook captures d7, and that's it. There's no stopping the pawn. Rook d4, you're gonna bring a queen into the game, win the rook, and easily win. Or you could get another queen. So you know, you can win this however you want. So it's a very, very interesting game, like I said, where one engine uses pure calculation, that's Ethereal, and you know, goes very, very deep. Whereas on the other hand, Shark Chess, who is based off of Stockfish, does go deep, but also tries to, you know, say, okay, this is a good square for the knight. You know, don't calculate. It's just a good square for the knight. You know, try to take that into consideration. Or this diagonal will be very nice for the bishop. So it's trying to, they're trying to, you know, humanize a way an engine is thinking. And, you know, if it can accomplish a game like this against 3567 engine, I would say they are doing a very, very good job. So that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. You know, even if your opponent doesn't, you know, go for the open game, like I said, this is, you know, that it was the standard bishop to b6, knight to a5 line against the Evans, so nothing special here. But even if you are forced, or you know, maybe not forced, maybe you can execute that pawn to d5 in an Evans Gambit, you know, not the end of the world. I always felt like it was, but here, you know, played at such a level, you know, with such powerful engines, you can see that even that can be done. So, you know, again, next time someone tells you Evans Gambit is a bad opening, no, it's not. You know, you could easily crush a 3500 engine if you're playing well. So yeah, if you still haven't seen my Evans Gambit tutorial, first link in the description below, do check it out. I would like to thank Robert Arathun, London Initiative for Safe AI, Ricardo Paulin, Richard Schwartz, and Brian Willits for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.